I'll show you simple tips and techniques for making plastic look like ceramic, spatterware, and even metal. I'm making over the cookware kit from Chrysnbon. This is an inexpensive kit with really realistic proportions. The pieces are made out of an easily paintable plastic. I bought the white version of this kit, but I did paint some of the pieces black. I was initially planning to make this casserole dish and lid look like really aged, dirty metal, but instead I'm taking a different approach, so I repainted this white. To very easily add a lot of detail, I'm using cheap nail stickers I got from Temu. You may have seen me use these to decorate birdhouses. I really like these stickers for this because the orange flowers look very reminiscent of something you may have seen on 1970s Pyrex dishes. These stickers are really thin, so I'm picking it up with my craft knife. To get a bit more use and fun out of this one set, I added one sticker to the front and a different type of sticker to the back. That makes this double-sided so I can just show whichever side I'm in the mood for. For added detail, I'm adding some extra leaves to each of the sides, so this will fill the space more and look more natural. These stickers are so thin they easily overlap one another without creating lines. I think this side looks more authentically vintage, but I do like this side as well. The lid can only get one look, so I'm choosing a sticker that corresponds with my favorite side. I realized after the fact I should have added this sticker when the lid was on the dish itself so I could line the stickers up with one another. This sticker was off to one side, so I had to remove it and replace it so it would be more centered. My nail sticker covered up the holes that are meant for attaching the lid handle, so I'm poking those. For added detail and to cover up this messy edge, I mixed up a custom orange paint color to paint around the rim and onto the handles. I used the same color around the edge of the lid and on the handle so it'll blend in with the flower. Now I'm topping the piece with a really shiny coating made by Triple Thick, but you could also use Dimensional Magic from Mod Podge or Diamond Glaze. You could also use clear nail polish. Applying a shiny top coat protects the stickers and paint and gives it a highly reflective look like glazed ceramic or glass. For the bread pan, I'm using water slide nail decals combined with stickers. I used scissors to cut out the piece of paper in the decal I'm using and use some water to slide it off. You can apply the design itself with tweezers, but I'm using my fingers to add the decal to a wet surface. Once it was in the position I liked, I dabbed away the excess moisture with a paper towel so it'll stay. I chose this blue design because blue and white china is really popular nowadays. For the other side, I'm using a combination of 3 berries I'm cutting off of a larger sticker and a couple of water slide decals. I would have preferred using holly leaves, but I didn't have any, but this is festive enough and is reminiscent of something you would see around Christmas. I also coated this one with Triple Thick to make it look like ceramic. Now I'm making some of the pieces look enameled. This was a bright white pot, so you can skip this step if you didn't accidentally paint it beige like I did, but to make it look more pure white, I'm giving it a couple of coats of white acrylic paint. I was planning to make the small saucepan also look like chipped enamel, but instead I went a different direction and painted it this blue color to make it look like spatterware. I have a very limited number of colors, so I mixed this one up myself. The outside of the pot is painted blue and the inside is a nice bright white. The pie pan in the kit is getting the same blue color. Rather than painting all 4 of these pieces with the same spatterware color, I'm painting the pitcher and lid a different color. I wish I had also done the pie pan the same color, but this pitcher and lid will end up being red. I really appreciate the details and realistic proportions you get with Chrysnbon pieces, but this particular pitcher has a weird nub on the handle, so I'm using my craft knife to remove that. This plastic is soft but sturdy, so it's easy to do. Now the handle looks delicate and natural, so it's ready for paint. I appreciate that Chrysnbon pieces can be easily painted with cheap acrylic paint because that's mostly what I've got. The pitcher was spinning freely on the end of my paintbrush during the first coat of paint, but for the second coat of paint I used some museum wax so I could hold it in place and more easily paint it. Museum wax is typically used to attach miniatures to walls, furniture, shelves, etc. without having to commit to gluing them or dealing with them falling over constantly. Now it's time to make this look like spatterware. I'm dipping a stiff bristled brush into some watered down white acrylic paint and pulling back on the bristles so little speckles fly onto the pitcher. You can practice this technique before you do it on your final piece to make sure you're getting the look you desire. It was around this point that I finally located the lid of this pitcher among all the crap on my messy desk, so I painted that red and gave it some speckles as well. If you don't have a stiff bristled brush like this, you can use a toothbrush, which is a more common way of doing this technique. As a finishing touch, it's best to add a very shiny coat so these really do look like enamel pieces. I'm using triple thick, but again, you can use several things to make yours shiny. Here's the saucepan before the shiny coating and after. The shiny coating makes them look more realistic and the paint job is protected. The white base coat has dried on the large pot, so I'm adding black around the rim and onto the handles. I'm using a thin black paint so it's easier to apply without making it lumpy. This is starting to look like a vintage enamel piece, but to make it look aged, I'm adding black spots where it looks like the enamel has chipped off, revealing cast iron, I believe, underneath. I don't want to overdo it, so I'm coming in with a smaller brush to add this detail. I'm painting irregular shapes rather than perfect circles so it looks more natural. Right now this sort of looks like if Cruella de Vil developed her own cookware line, so I'm adding some more detail to make this look aged. I'm painting some cinnamon folk art paint around my black dots and diffusing it with my fingertip to make it look like authentic rust spots. I sealed the pieces first because if you end up doing something you don't like, you can very easily wipe the paint away with just some water and try again. You could seal the white paint before adding the black spots to have the same level of flexibility. I intentionally added all of the aging to one side of the pot and lid so I can reveal this side in a rustic setting but flip it around if I want a cleaner look. I was recently watching a Tiny Craft Life video and she used a chrome marker to make air dry clay look like real metal, so I paused the video, took a screenshot, went on Amazon and bought a set of my own. This set comes with copper, chrome, and gold markers. These are Sig Wong chrome markers. I paid $9 for this set, which is only $3 a marker. They're wrapped up extremely well with plastic on the outside and plastic on each individual marker, so I'll be right back. I actually read the instructions because I don't want to screw this up, so I shook the marker and I'm pressing the nib a few times to get the paint to flow into the end. I don't claim to be an art supply expert, but I'm guessing these would be more reminiscent of paint pens versus a marker that's filled with ink. Each of the markers is filled with a thin, metallic, high luster paint. This is the chrome, copper, and gold. I'm using the chrome marker first because this is the marker that initially caught my eye. I'm making this little flower scoop from the kit look like a very shiny, realistic metal. Normally, I don't end up buying a new product because I'm cheap and I end up over-researching and can't commit to anything, but I'm glad I just went for it and got these markers because they are absolutely incredible, really cheap, and I'll probably keep rebuying these. The chrome paint takes a minute to dry, so I held the handle with a Dollar Tree clip and painted the handle later. This only needed one coat. This tiny thing is apparently a cake turner, and I kept it attached to the sprue to make it easier to paint. There's a tea kettle included in the kit, and I want to make this look like a copper tea kettle. I think my sloppy paint jobs may have gummed up the lines because instead of closing really tightly like the pitcher, there are some gaps, so I'm filling those with wood glue. I like using wood glue as a filler because it seems to stick to everything and gives a nice smooth finish. I applied the wood glue with a wooden skewer, and I'm using a combination of my fingers and a paintbrush to help smooth it out. I had already done all of my smoothing before the glue even dried, so I should have skipped this step because it caused some problems. I came in with a nail file and a metal file to help smooth out the wood glue even more after it had dried. I'm using my cordless hot glue gun to attach it to the end of a paintbrush for easy painting. I'm applying the copper paint and initially it looks really good. I love how the thin paint floods the surface and gives one coat coverage without any visible brush strokes or marker lines. Unfortunately, you can see a lot of texture where I aggressively sanded one of the sides and didn't clean it up, although I will say I did nicely conceal the seam because it completely disappeared. I'll often just display the nice side of a miniature, but this one doesn't really have a nice side, so I'm using some very fine steel wool to sand away some of this texture so I can repaint it. This time I wiped away the plastic dust before coming back in with the marker. This is how it looks dry. I don't think the other colors are quite as impressive as the chrome, but I still really love how this looks. The tea kettle easily popped off the hot glue, leaving it behind, so now I'm coming in to paint the handle. The handle is also made of plastic, but the side pieces look like thin wire with a wooden piece in the middle. I colored one side, then held it with a Dollar Tree clip so I could paint the other side and let it dry. To fake the look of wood on this plastic, I did a base coat of cinnamon folk art paint. This creates a warm undertone for a fake wood. The spatula handle is getting the same treatment. I used a thin coat of brown paint without doing full coverage to make it look like the grain of wood over the base coat. I learned this trick from Tiny Keyhole Minis. I needed to do extra steps because of my poor prep, but this was still really easy. This would also look really cute painted with nail decals to look like ceramic. For another painted metallic effect, I'm using Silver Leaf Rub and Buff. We've probably all seen the gold Rub and Buff colors, but they also have black and silver. Rub and Buff is waxy and will trash your brush, so I'm applying mine with a Q-tip. I want this to look like a used muffin tin, so I'm not worrying about getting full coverage, so some of the black is still peeking through. Little Q-tip fibers were getting stuck to my paint, so I'm coming in with a brush I don't mind destroying a bit. This will strictly be a Rub and Buff brush from now on because I don't know how to wash this out of a brush. For the sheet pan, I'm using Sargent acrylic paint. I got this from Walmart, so it's not an expensive paint, but people really do like the metallic effect from this. One coat wasn't quite enough, so I gave it 2 coats. I want these to look like the kind of sheet pans and muffin pans that you're embarrassed pulling out of your cabinet in front of your guests. To create that used appearance, I added black and brown paint to each piece. I always love hearing which pieces are your favorites and if you guys have any additional ideas for me. Consider joining my Patreon either as a free member or as a paying member for $3 a month. Check out this video next if you want to see how I made some of the accessories for the cardboard room box.